Welcome to the Bank Marketing Show, the podcast that engages and informs you for success in today's marketplace. It's the show that will make you a better marketer with trends, tactics, and inspiration from experts and industry leaders. If you're wanting to impact your personal success and position your bank as the best choice in your market, you're in the right place. Now let's dive into today's show with your hosts, Chris and Dan.
Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Bank Marketing Show. I'm half of your hosts, Dan Navalis. Also got Chris with us. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Dan. How's it going today?
It's going well. Just getting the coffee going.
Maybe that's why we make a good hosting team, because each of us in and of ourselves is only half of a host, right?
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
I'm 50% of a good host.
Yeah.
But together we're a team.
That's right. That's right. Which I think I actually heard from one of our listeners not long ago. This is a quick aside. And they actually commented and appreciated the fact that we co-host this together and that we're both agencies and agency owners in the same, industry vertical in bank marketing. And they were like, well, how did you guys do that as competitors? And I was like, well, the further we dove into what Dan and his agency actually do and what my agency does are so complementary and not competitive. And Dan, I think it speaks a lot to kind of that surface aversion to, oh man, I can't work with another agency, or it's even applicable to bank. Oh, we can't work with, have discussions with that other bank. It's like, man, if you don't think there's enough business out there and that scopes of focus are different enough, then kind of looking really small picture,
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I think we're both very much into just how can we help banks, and we've got different backgrounds, different outlooks, and definitely complementary. And I think that's why we're already on episode 18 here.
There you go. Yeah, with hundreds of downloads happening and all kind of stuff. So
there you go.
Good. Well, Dan, it's great to be into another one here. I know on our last episode, we did a case study around a $300 million asset bank and kind of a campaign set around increasing loans and all that. So today we wanted to carry forward another case study that we think is going to be really valuable for our listeners. And this one is primarily around social media engagement and a kind of a use and case study with one of your client banks, and kind of what's happened and the process that you guys went through together, your agency and the bank, and some of the outcomes from that. And I think this will be really useful for everybody, regardless of your company size. So excited about it.
Yeah, no, we just want to share some things that have worked for one of our clients, and hopefully, and everybody's. It's one of those topics where I think every bank's at a different kind of stage in their social media journey. Some of you are probably just getting started. Some of you are, have tens of thousands of followers and kind of know what's working. But I think a lot of people are in the middle and just sort of, struggling. And you get started, it's relatively easy to get some followers at the beginning, and then kind of hit a wall in the middle of like, well, what do we do now? How do we take this forward? How do we take it to the next level? How do we make it something worth spending our time on?
That's right.
And not forgetting. So hoping we'll share the story of this client we've been working with, and I think there's probably hopefully some takeaways for no matter what size your bank or where you are in your journey.
That's right. Well, and we're all aware that algorithms are changing constantly. Just the entire dynamics around social platforms are constantly changing and evolving. And, some of the big basic premises may be the same, but the kind of the real tips and how-tos about significant engagement and engagement percentages, some of the stuff we'll talk about today, man, it's different than it was not a year ago. It's different than it was 3 months ago, and it's constantly changing. So, and something that that we think a case study discussion like this may help some of our folks. So let's dive in.
Yeah. Well, to play off what you just said and set the stage a little bit, it's no surprise or secret. Like Facebook organic engagement has been dropping precipitously for a number of years. And by that, I mean like the percentage of your followers that see your non-paid posts, the normal day-to-day posts you put up, like the several years, 5-6 years ago, many more people would see your posts just naturally than do today. And that's, it's part due to just, there's a lot more activity on Facebook these days, but part due to it's an intentional decision on Facebook's part to reduce that and kind of get businesses to pay. So Facebook's very much a pay-to-play marketplace these days. It's a lot more about sponsorships and sponsored posts and trying to get people to buy things. Like I'm constantly getting a 20% off if you check out through Facebook. So like in some ways they're trying to compete with places like Amazon and trying to get you to actually buy stuff through the Facebook or Instagram platforms. And as part of that, they want businesses to pay to get their posts seen. And so there's one level of it. Another level or layer of what's going on is just the Facebook algorithm for a long time has been, favors stuff that gets more engagement. So likes, comments, shares. And that's why, it's also no secret that Facebook's had been in the news in the political circles for promoting very polarizing political content.
Yep.
And those things like the lower organic reach and rewarding polarizing content kind of combine to make a perfect storm of making it hard for banks to post on Facebook. If there's one thing banks don't like to do on social media, it's post anything polarizing. I've had the let's remain purple conversation with lots of our clients, and that's where you should be as a bank, right? You're trying to appeal and build relationships with everybody, be risk averse, like avoid the political arenas, but that's that doesn't help you do more on Facebook.
Right. How do you stay within that spectrum as to where you should be and your voice as a business, yet have good engagement, increase it regularly, and what type of engagement? And I know our conversation today will dive into a bit more about that. So it's how to still win in that. And it's not just Facebook, because then consequently it's Instagram, and then lots of the others, follow the same model approaches, because at the end of the day, they're all about profitability as well. So it's not just a chit chat forum anymore in the social media world, So
no, the third layer of stuff that's going on is, I don't know, that I call it the TikTokification of social media. So TikTok as a platform has grown super fast, right? Each time a new platform launches, it grows much faster than the one before it. And, and TikTok is a lot more about user-generated content. So, as a company, especially as a bank, going on there and saying, hello, we have checking accounts, is not going to get you anywhere on TikTok. You've got to have dynamic people. And, anyway, it's been a younger platform. I feel like that's going to change over time. But, it's not only new, but it's a lot harder for banks to create that engaging user-generated content there.
Yeah.
And then Facebook, Facebook announced a few months ago that they're changing their platform to become a little bit more TikTok-y and show show recommended posts more and make it feel a lot more like, emphasize the reels and videos and things like that versus just the standard news feed. So everything is sort of shifting in that TikTok-y, direction. Still emphasizing, engaging or, TikTok is less about the polarizing stuff and more about humorous or hopping on trends, right? Which is, you've got to act quickly, right? So make a video around the latest, song or audio clip that's trending on TikTok, but that you've got to do that, the day of, right?
Yep.
Which is another layer that's really hard for banks to do, because you're not, if you don't have a full-time social media only person, it's really hard. So my point is, there's a lot of social media trends that it was already kind of hard for banks to be super engaging on social media, but it's just getting harder over time.
There you go.
So, I mean, to get more into the case study itself, with that environment sort of set, I think a lot of banks are seeing their organic engagement drop, right? So the percentage of your people that like, comment, or share on your posts is dropping over time. And
Right.
Facebook
That's
wants
the
you
real,
to pay.
That's the case. That's the pain point of what we're trying to set up here, and kind of paint a picture for how, in this particular case use, that was addressed to an extent. Yep.
Yeah. So Facebook wants you to pay, and so this is the case for boosted posts, which we'll get into as we talk about the case study. Facebook would love if you just they made it real easy to just toss money at them, which isn't the best idea. Google does some of this too. If you're running Google ads, you probably get calls from the sales team, and they'll tell you, "Oh, you're not using this feature," but really it's spend more money. And that's what kind of Facebook boosted posts. They've gotten it to the point where you'll see one of your own posts in your newsfeed, and there'll just be a boost button, right? And so that's their attempt to say, hey, organic reach is down intentionally, but now you can put money at it and get the organic reach up. But if you don't have engaging content, it's still an uphill climb.
So, Dan, what was kind of the background scenario at the beginning of this engagement with your bank client?
Yeah, so I mean, this just to paint a picture of this bank client, it's a $2 billion kind of regional bank in a metro area, and they've been on Facebook for a long time, but had always kind of struggled with they didn't have a lot of followers, or they had a couple thousand followers, but as kind of a bigger bank, they felt like they should have a lot more. They felt like any post that they did, you would only get a handful of likes and comments, and most of those were from employees. And so they kind of said, hey, like we want to increase our social media engagement. We want to get more followers. We've got, I'm making some of these numbers up, but we've got, let's say 50,000 customers, but only 2,000 Facebook followers.
Yeah.
How do we get more of that? They would look at smaller banks that have, 10,000 customers, but have 5,000 followers, and kind of compare there. They'd look at the really big banks and say, the big national bank has 3 million followers and they get hundreds of engagements on each post. So how do we compete there? So that's kind of the world they started, and said, well, we're posting every day, right? We're telling story. We're trying to tell stories. We're putting testimonials, but it's not working. What do we do? And so before we started working with them, they were doing, they had a boost budget, and they'd kind of boost a couple, promotional posts each month, things like that. But they just weren't getting much traction.
So it sounded like what they needed from here was strategy and some information, some data around it, and a better strategy. So Dan, what did that begin to look like? How did you guys start to move forward in this process?
Yeah, so I think anything on social, you're playing a game of how do we beat the algorithm, and that always kind of starts with the data, right? So we got them set up on Sprout Social, a social media posting platform that has easier to digest analytics with it than the Facebook. Like Facebook platform will give you some analytics, but we really want to understand, like, really what are your top posts? What does engagement really look like? What does it look like compared to your competitors? So the first thing we did was really take a look at, like, let's go back over the past year, go month by month, and look at what were your top posts each month, right? So as a bank, like, you're not going viral with much, right? If you're the type of business that occasionally gets a viral post, you can kind of learn from that and say, like, well, here's our last thing that really got outsized results. What can we do to replicate that? With the bank, it's not so much about that, but we tried to look for trends. Like, our hypothesis going in was, hey, your promotional posts where you're just saying, come get a checking account or open an account online, or here are our rates, those are not going to be all that engaging, right? Because that's not what people are on Facebook for. It's not what people are on social media for. But we didn't, we wanted to see, like, where have you seen some success? And what we found, we looked over a 12-month period, and what we found was the top 3 or 4 posts each month were always the ones with pictures of people.
Yes.
So you could like print out, if you printed out all their posts for the month in order of engagement, the ones at the top were always the people. And you looked at the bottom of the list, it was always the stock images and the, the generic looking like Canva graphics. There's a place for Canva for sure. But like, if you're using stuff that feels stock, that's always the bottom of the list. It's just, okay, well, here's what's working for you, right? So step one is like, we need to, do more posts with people. How do we do that?
It's back to that grand, super secret a premise of what social media is about, Dan. It's social.
Yeah.
Meaning it's about people wanting to have conversation or see other people or do those types of things. I didn't wake up this morning and think, man, wonder if I could find a really competitive CD rate. I know what I can do. I'll go on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. It's
well,
like,
and
come on, that's
and right. Think about how most people are consuming Facebook and social media. And I had a bit of insomnia last night. I'm scrolling Facebook at 1 a.m. I'm not going to go like, oh, this is a great time to open an account.
Right.
I'm on my commute. I'm on the train, or I'm in the waiting room at the doctor or whatever. And that's the time I'm usually on those things. But I'm not engaged in a way of like, okay, now it's time to get some work done. It's so,
but what you are doing at those times, and what my ridiculous example was about, though, is what we are doing as people is we're absorbing brand messaging.
Yes.
If and when we're engaged with people socially.
Yeah. It's
even
still a
people
brand
that
touch.
we don't know. Yeah. Maybe it's somebody at the bank, and this person with X messaging around it, or these people and what they did or going to do or whatever. But we're absorbing that brand messaging along with that, right?
Yeah. Well, and to be honest too, it's even if most people just scroll Facebook, and I'm using Facebook as an example. This is pretty true for most social media platforms. You're scrolling and you see each picture for a split second. And if the picture is engaging, you might go to the text and read more about it. But even if you just get this picture for a split second, it's a brand touch, right?
Nice.
And, no one's going to be engaged and fully read every single post that you do. But if you show up in their feed repeatedly, you're building a relationship, right? You're building a social media level relationship.
There you go.
And that's, that sort of primes their wheels for when you promotion or you do an ad. They're a lot more familiar with you. They feel like they know you, and they're much more ready to take the action you want them to take, but they're not going to take it in the middle of doom scrolling Facebook. That's a huge ask to get them to switch into sort of doing mode when they're just in sort of numb, mindless mode of scrolling.
Yeah.
But, you've got those things in your Facebook feed, and then if you're running display ads, you're running Google ads, like when they get to the point of actually shopping and actually taking care of business, they'll be much more likely to click on your ads or remember you in those cases, and
there you go,
and take action.
That's right. So in this case study, I know the data deep dive went even further than you're describing, but let's say now you have that data and that information, and you guys were looking at that. So then what? What's next in this process?
Yeah, well, the next level of the data, we looked at competitors. So the bank had this feeling of her competitors are getting a lot more engagement, and what are they doing that's different? And so we did some research and actually just looked at competitor feeds and said, well, they've already figured out that the posts of people get more engagement. Your competitors are not, the competitors who are doing well are not posting really much promotional stuff at all. I mean, it's like indirectly promotional if it's a testimonial or something like that, but they're not doing just a post of here's our refi rates or something. So we actually looked at, the other thing we noticed was just we wanted to have the right metrics to look at. So a count of absolute engagement level, like say just, hey, each post we do gets an average of 8 likes is not, it's, we say we get 8 likes, but Bank of America gets, 500 likes on every post. that's not apples to apples because you only have 2,000 followers and they've got several million.
Right.
So, I worked with this client to sort of start looking at like rates, not counts. So, when we say engagement rate, it's more of take the number of engagements on the post and sort of you look at it as a percentage of your followers. So, let's say 10 likes with 2,000 followers versus, 100 likes and 3 million followers. You're actually I'm doing my math right.
Yeah, 5% is way better than a 0.000 whatever theirs was.
Yeah. So, whatever those numbers are, like that, you got to look at the rate and realize that, and that's because of the lower organic reach that I mentioned earlier. Like you've got to look at those rates and say, we only have 5 likes, but it's on a much smaller base than the big national folks.
Yeah, and Dan, the other piece too is maybe you've only got 2,000 followers, but if those are in your geographic area, if those are, within proximity to your branches, and if those are, quote unquote, I always say this loosely, but local audiences versus, ones from all over the place, that also makes that engagement criterion percentage much more meaningful. Those 10 likes are far more valuable than, random people from all over the place that aren't going to engage with your bank.
Yeah. And I, as a bank, you're in the relationship business and you should prioritize fewer but deeper engagements than a vanity number of, hey, we get 500 likes on every post. I'd rather see the bank get 10 comments of somebody that took time to write something than just click the like button.
Yep.
Especially for smaller banks I think that's going to go further to your point of in one community where more friends of friends are going to see those things. I mean, it is true, like the more comments and likes that you get, the more non-followers see your posts, the more friends of friends and stuff like that. But you're not necessarily going for the broadest reach possible. You're going for engagement and relationship building.
Yep.
So, look at those rates and say, how are we, the absolute numbers sound small, but how are our rates comparing with our competitors?
Okay.
So we started there, like when we started, the rates were, this bank's rate, engagement rates were actually better than we thought, right? They were fairly competitive with the competitors. We picked a couple competitors that were around their same size in the same area. And then we also put in a few big national banks just to get another perspective on it. And their engagement rates actually were not, were pretty competitive with these other banks. So, the first thing we kind of did was say, hey, you're not as bad off as you think, right? Like you're doing pretty well, but I think there's some room to improve just based on, we can look at the ones, what are the posts that are driving the better engagement rates? And that goes back to, we're talking about like the top posts are always the ones with people.
Yeah.
So let's do more posts with people.
There you go. So that was my next question for you is talk about how the strategy evolved.
Yes. I mean, we said, we clearly know we need to do more posts with people. The posts about people were usually leaning on storytelling, right? So it's, their posts fell into a few categories. One around like, bank employee updates, right? Somebody gets promoted, somebody gets appointed to the president of a local board, somebody's done something cool on a local community improvement project, something, stuff like that. And then the other side of it was that the other posts about people were around customers. So customers doing something cool. The bank enabled a customer to do something cool, things like that. So we looked at all those top posts over the previous 12 months and we said, here, how can we just like make a plan that focuses more on this stuff? And the bank was also, the bank was also in a mode of, we've got to post every day. But, with organic reach the way it is, nobody sees all those posts. And I said, like, Facebook will show your posts more if they get more engagement. So you're actually going to do better by taking off these posts and not doing these posts that don't get any engagement. In doing 10 or 15 posts a month instead of 20 or 25, if those 10 or 15 are just the ones that have people and tell stories, and we know that it'll get better engagement.
Quality
so
over
we started
quantity.
there. Yeah, spend more time on fewer posts and get more engagement out of them. You can always add more posts in later, but the first thing to do is to make sure Facebook sees your page as an engaging page that it should show more. And those low engagement posts will totally ding you. So it's better to do fewer, deeper posts and just more for the sake of it.
Okay.
So we started with that. At the time we were also talking about, they only had a Facebook page where they were like, oh, we need to get on Instagram. And, I said like, Instagram, it's like the same platform. It's a different video or image format, right? Instagram wants you to do squares.
Different window pane, right?
Yeah. But like, let's get good at the stories first. There's no rush, right? You're a bank, you've been around 100 years. You want to be around 100 more.
Yeah.
If we just get really good at Facebook for this quarter or this half of the year, we can come back to Instagram later.
Yep.
So like I said, like, I'm a big proponent of don't bite off more than you can chew. With social media, it's the consistency is the hard part. The ideas and the storytelling are the hard part. So get really good at that, even if it means one platform, even if it only means one post a week. Get good at that, and adding the frequency later is a lot easier.
Dan, I'll throw in a thought. I actually presented around this topic at a conference a couple of years back, and was having a conversation post-presentation with a marketing director for a bank. And the short story is she was pulling her hair out, posting multiple times a day on Twitter. Okay. And went on and on and on about this and her content and her this and that and all the other kind of stuff. I was like, so how often are you getting retweeted? What's your engagement? When we discussed it, and the short story is there was none, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, okay, our bank president's retweeting it. Okay. So, to your point, Dan, it's an evaluation of the platform. It's not always running harder or faster or more and more posting and all that. And I think that is exactly the wrong mentality sometimes. So I'm interested in hearing where you're going, not only with the data, but the new strategy. And in this case with your client, that quality over quantity and more was not better.
Right. Well, and so this client also had, they were already pretty good at collecting customer stories and testimonials, which is also another really hard part. We could probably do a whole other episode around that. But this is one of the big things they had going for them is just that. They already had these stories. It was a matter of, they would put together a big white paper every year that told all these stories. And they'd post stories on social media, but it was much more about like, download our white paper, right? Here's a little taste of what's in the white paper, download the white paper. But like, your investors might be interested in the white paper, your board members, but like your customers they're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So they were looking at, how many downloads of this are we getting? And I said, look, like, people don't want to download stuff on social media. They want to read the stuff.
Is it?
So break up these stories and just post them. Don't ask for the download. Then maybe you could put in a link or say, come to this webpage to learn, to see even more stories.
Yeah.
Don't expect anybody to click on it. But like, you could put that there. But like, what we really wanted to do is put the whole story on Facebook. Like, why are you hiding the stuff behind a download wall? Break up, they had 15 or 20 stories in each report. So post one every couple weeks, but post the whole story.
And it
really
can be
good picture.
Evergreen. Yeah. It's not necessarily just what we did on Christmas Eve. It was, your evergreen stuff, your community engagement, right?
Yeah.
All kinds of things like that.
Get a really good story, post a really good picture, tell the story in an engaging way.
Yeah.
Not as a report, right? It's not about the bank provided a loan and this business was able to continue operations. It's, oh my God, we changed this person's life, right?
Yeah.
This person, had struggled with X for so long and, we were here to help them, or because of the relationship, because of our focus on the community, we were able to help them. We were doing some video shoots last week, and it's this different client, but side example of, we did a customer testimonial video, and the customer was this like property developer. And he says, tell us an example of how like your relationship with the bank has improved your business. And he's like, well, I've been banking with them so long. Like, I'm at a property auction and I see something I want, I just buy it. And I know that they're going to come and fund me,
Yeah.
right? I know we've been working together so long. I know the limits. I know how they operate. And it's, I don't have to like step aside in the auction and call my banker and figure stuff out. I just do what I need to do. And I know that they'll support me.
Yeah.
And that's, if you can tell those stories versus we provided this customer with a 5-year arm, and tell it in that engaging way. That's what we were really going for. And they had these stories, right? But in a white paper, you talk in a certain way. And on social, you sort of talk into it in another. And they were taking, it was professionally written really well, but it was written for the white paper. So we said, to get this on social, we need to flip stuff around. So don't say like, our bank is proud to support, small local businesses. For example, we did this. Like, that's kind of how you write the white paper. But on social, you want to say like, Jim was down on his luck, and now he's I'm making this up, but now he's a successful business owner who's changed his community.
But it is storytelling and it's conversational. It's not reporting, right? Yeah,
and it's just on social you really got to like. I think most people will scroll through social and look at the picture and then go back and read the text. So you've really got to like make the picture engaging and then start the text out with like the first sentence of the text has to be the payoff. Right? You can't bury it and make people click see more to see it. It's really got to be in that first line. So this, whatever stat you're posting about, whatever cool outcome of the story, that's the first line. And then you can back up into the story. And most people won't read the whole story, but for the brand engagement perspective, they see the picture, they read that first line, and they've moved on to the next post, but they got a little notch, in their head about what your bank can do.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing we focused on with them was like, let's post less often, but let's spend more time with each post and really look at each story and think, how can we really tell it? And the other level of it is the bank was doing a lot, they in like Hispanic Heritage Month and the kind of the cultural celebration months and Indigenous Peoples Day and those types of stuff they'd post about. So when they had a story about a customer in one of those groups, we'd sort of time it, to go along with that too. But so that was just kind of the planning and structure of it. But that'll get you. The other thing that social media platforms reward is that timeliness,
right,
and engagement. So if you can time stuff out, that will help you too.
There you go. So Dan, you guys had some marked outcomes from this process, and you and I were discussing this before we started the show today. On kind of where this went and the outcomes from it. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, the basic outcome is we saw looking at that engagement rate, that percentage of your followers that engage on any given post over the first 3 months of just doing this shift. We saw a 40% increase on that engagement rate just in the first 3 months of doing this.
That's significant.
Yeah, it was, and what we saw was, and they were, like I said earlier, they were starting at that point of that rate was about the same as even the big national banks, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they were getting, this bank was getting a dozen engagements on a post and the big national bank was getting 500, but the rate was far higher. And then we improved on that just by shifting the stuff around.
There you go.
And not doing much else.
Yep.
So that was our goal for like the first quarter is just like, what can we, where have we seen little successes that we can kind of exploit and get more engagement out of it? So yeah, that was the first quarter. Once we started sort of gotten that rhythm, we said, hey, what else can we do to get more likes? Right now we've gotten the engagement rate up, but can we start building our audience a little bit more? And so that gets a little more difficult, right? You could pay for it. Facebook will let you run a campaign to drive likes, but they're not quality. They're just, Facebook gets people to click because that's the business that they're in, is getting people to click. So it's not necessarily people that are going to be, that our customers are going to become customers, but so we then we started working with them on, you've got 50,000 customers, right? Like now you're telling good stories, right? Like let's use your email list and just ask for followers. They were a little reticent to do that for good reason of like, we don't just want to we don't want to bug people. We don't want to just be constantly getting people, asking for the likes to our followers. But I said, why don't we start an email series with these stories? We're getting really good at this engaging storytelling. Why don't we start an email series, and once a month you send out an email that says, here's the story that Also, we're featuring on social media this month. And at the bottom, we can say, hey, for more, follow us on social.
Okay.
Right. And then you're giving people something in return. You're not just saying, follow us on social. We tell these good stories. And hey, if this email story, if you like this, if this is interesting to you, follow us for more.
Yeah.
So that's helped, I to be fully honest, it's not like they 10x'd their social media followers with it. We're still talking about, banking stories, not polarizing political content, but they've seen, their social media following grow. And if you can grow 30 likes a month, right, in a year, that's 300-400 people. And I think as your social media following grows, that 30 becomes 40 a month. And it's a slow process, but you need to just create a process and a series of activities that you're doing that always lead to a little bit of growth. And over time, it's going to be a lot. So that's what we're focusing on now, is just, kind of hammering that. And now that we're spending all this time on content, where are all the other places we can use it?
There you go. Yeah. And again, to hammer home the point that community-based financial institutions, the quality and ultimately the ROI, from that, even if it's small incremental increases in engagement, it is where it can be significant. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right, like we said earlier, the content and the consistency are the hard parts. So now that we have gotten that down, and now it's getting into the fall here, we're working on 2023 plans. So now we're talking about, hey, we've got these great stories. Let's just start putting them on Instagram, right? It's just a matter of make the photo into a slightly different format, or make a little 10-second Instagram story out of it. But it's the same stuff. Post it there. Take the stories around local businesses, put those on the LinkedIn page. So we're getting more mileage out of each story, right? It doesn't take much longer. Maybe it takes, 10% longer than it normally would to create different formats of pictures and videos, but then it's super easy to get them on other platforms and get engagement there. Yep. And this bank actually, a lot of banks are very heavy on commercial. Most of your profit comes from commercial. So their LinkedIn following, we've actually had a much easier time growing that than Facebook.
Okay.
Which in the long run is going to do better for the bank. So most banks sort of flock to Facebook, but don't forget, it's perfectly okay to start with LinkedIn. And if your exec team is holding back on letting you or your team spend more time on social media stuff, maybe LinkedIn is a place where you can help your lenders make more connections and get more business, and then you can tell a story there and then bring it over to other platforms too. Yeah. So there's no one right path, and this is just kind of what's worked for this bank. But I think the takeaways, storytelling, quality over quantity are things that should help any bank that's going on this journey.
There you go. Well, Dan, this has been great. I think our last episode and this one, hopefully our listeners have had pencils out and kind of, taking notes.
Not if you're driving though.
Yeah, not while driving. But taking mental note of some of the ways that this information is applicable to them, and kind of how the whole process of this, from a social media engagement standpoint, and even from a broader brand building and ultimately marketing engagement standpoint, has real value and applicability to everybody listening to our show here, regardless of your company size.
Yeah.
So great. Well, super. Well, thanks for sharing all of that, Dan. Really helpful, great information. I know that some of the things that you and I have coming up as well, you and I have both been out and about in the world again a bit over recent months and been to some conferences and things. So we've got some guests coming up for the show and those types of things that I think are really going to continue to grow our engagement and be valuable to everyone. And so we're looking forward to some of those upcoming episodes as well, Dan.
Yeah, got some great folks and topics planned. So stay tuned.
There you go. And an invitation to anyone listening as well, is if you would like to learn deeper and more information about any of these case studies and kind of how was that done, and have more discussion around that. Certainly, both of us are happy to share that or share the links to the platforms that all of this is happening on, or whatever the case may be. So feel free to reach out to either one of us.
Definitely.
All right. Well, Dan, thanks a lot, man. Have a great one. Appreciate you and see you for the next episode.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Thanks for joining us. To go deeper or get access to some of the valuable nuggets from today's show, go to bankmarketingshow.com. There you'll find episodes, links to resources, and much more. Be sure to subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. And join us next time.